Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're going to talk about tabletop, we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about brand damage, massive brand damage to Dungeons & Dragons with one very ill-conceived business plan, the WotC OGL 1.1, which has become a massive debacle. In fact, many mainstream media outlets are covering it. Outlets that normally don't cover Dungeons & Dragons talking about what a colossal misfire this announcement was. They've released a statement, WotC, that they're going to try to walk it back a little bit, but you know, the damage has already been done. Guys, damage has already been done. In fact, there are several other publishers stepping up and announcing that they're going to leave Dungeons & Dragons, that they're going to create their own open game licenses. Several publishers. And the irony in all of this is that the OGL 1.1 was designed to basically lock down D&D and prevent people from creating competitors to D&D. But Hasbro just guaranteed that they're going to make themselves a whole lot of competition. In fact, D&D could just be one of many other tabletop brands. Obviously, it has the most brand recognition for now, but they've lost whatever goodwill they've had from the fandom because of this stupid decision. I mean, this is like the D&D debacle has been a masterclass in how to destroy your brand in under a week. Unbelievable. So yeah, we're going to talk about the statement that they released. We're going to talk about how game makers are staging an exodus from D&D, and they're also creating their own open game licenses of sorts, right? That they're going to actually open up their game systems to the people that would have developed stuff for D&D, because this is what helped D&D become as popular, as it is current year. We're going to talk about how this could impact Hasbro's stock. The Motley Fool actually talking about Hasbro stock being down, and look, Hasbro has come under fire. WotC has come under fire for mishandling Magic the Gathering, which is what Hasbro is blaming their less than stellar performance last quarter on, was the mishandling of Magic the Gathering, and now they have another big cluster with D&D, and it is not going the way that they were hoping, for sure. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 288, almost 289,000 subs. Thank you for the support. We do talk about tabletop gaming a lot more than we have in recent months because of all the drama around Dungeons & Dragons. Like I said, if you go out to news and you search Dungeons & Dragons, almost all of the articles are talking about the damage that Wizards has done to its brand with this really ill-conceived OGL 1.1. And now they've released a statement, so we're going to look at the statement, and then we're going to talk about how everybody is ditching Dungeons & Dragons. Again, coming from IO9, which I believe broke the news, that they're the ones who leaked the language of OGL 1.1, and people said, hey, it's not real, it's too strict, there's no way that Hasbro would do this, that they would basically penalize people for creating content for their game. And no, it was 100% true. So Wizards of the Coast announces transparent feedback process on D&D's new game license. Yeah, they went radio silent. They canceled their Twitch stream. It's crazy. After a series of reports by IO9 exposed controversial new plans for the RPG's content license, the D&D team is taking a collaborative approach now because they got busted. So this is the ongoing apology to creators. And look, I would never trust Wizards of the Coast again. I mean, this is the same Wizards of the Coast before OGL 1.1, right? The same Wizards of the Coast that screwed over some of the OG AD&D campaign world creators. I mean, Spelljammer and Dragonlance come to mind. That when they released new Spelljammer and Dragonlance books, the original creators were not even notified that they were doing it. They had to find out just like everybody else. Margaret Wise, Tracy Hickman had to find out that Dragonlance was coming back. There was a lawsuit over Dragonlance. I don't remember the specifics of it, but there has been a lot of drama about how they have treated their official creators, the people who created their official campaign worlds. Worlds and modules they've been selling for decades, are treated very, very poorly. So why would you think you coming in off the street were going to be any different? Seriously, why did you guys think that you were going to be any different? This is just how Wizards rolls. No pun intended. It's part of Hasbro, and it's a corporation. They're not your friends. It's a corporation. Anyway, in a blog post on D&D Beyond's official website, D&D executive producer Kyle Brink announced another new iteration of WotC's recent plans for a post 1.0 OGL world will be developed hand in hand with community feedback, akin to how the company currently solicits feedback for Unearthed Arcana, pre-release rule sets for new class variations, etc., and the upcoming new edition of D&D dubbed 1 D&D. We are sorry. We got it wrong. Our language and requirements in the draft OGL were disruptive to creators and not in support of our core goals of protecting and cultivating an inclusive play environment and limiting the OGL to TTRPGs. Then we compounded things by being silent for so long. We hurt fans and creators when more frequent and clear communication could have prevented so much of this. Yeah, they could have handled this a lot better. I don't think they expected to get busted in 4K the way that they did. But it's too late. The genie's out of the bottle, because immediately after this debacle, lots of other game companies are stepping up and releasing their own open game licenses, because they're like, well, if you're ditching D&D, come on over and use our system. So IO9 broke the news of WotC's plan for an OGL 1.1 on January 5th, where a leaked draft of the newest iteration of the license included royalty payments for creatives who make more than $750,000 on products using the license, as well as controversial steps to both phase out the authorization of the current version of OGL and wield more creative control on properties and homebrew systems created under the new terms. Feedback among fans and third-party TTRPG developers alike was immediately outspoken, with publishers like Pathfinder developer Paizo announcing its own multi-system game license as a rebuke, while WotC remains silent, canceling planned announcements before an initial statement on Friday, January 13th. Friday 13th, yes. So again, Hasbro just made so much more competition. Like, this is one of the worst PR disasters I have ever seen, ever, for any company ever. Like, you guys just stepped in it. Like, the whole purpose of OGL 1.1 was to lock down the system, so everybody had to play by your rules, play by your game system if they wanted to develop, modules or homebrew or whatever, and give you a cut. And all that happened was everybody told you to go pound sand, and they're like, we're just going to create our own stuff. We don't need you at all. I mean, this is just like absolutely ridiculous. I think there was something similar with Star Trek fandom. If I remember, there was a fan film or fan TV series that Paramount really stepped in it over, and it definitely damaged the brand. And they're going to have a hard time coming back from this, especially if the movie bombs. I don't know how the movie's going to do. The trailer does not look good. I gotta be honest, and they're betting heavy on that. They have a TV show coming, and it's done by the people that did Halo for Paramount. So I'm not expecting much there, but I know what they're trying to do. They're basically trying to make D&D the tabletop brand, and you're gonna have to buy all their stuff if you want to play D&D. But I think the community is moved on for sure. The vibe I'm getting is everybody's moved on. Thank you for caring enough to let us know what works and what doesn't, what you need and what scares you. Without knowing that, we can't do our part to make the new OGL match our principles. The statement, credited only to the D&D Beyond staff, concluded, finally, we'd appreciate the chance to make this right. We love D&D's devoted players and the creators who take them on so many incredible adventures. We won't let you down, guys. Please don't leave. It's too late. It's too late. The mask fell off. They see you for what you actually are. And I'm not saying that there aren't people working at Wizards that are passionate about the fan base and passionate about the game, and they're in it because they love it. But Cynthia Williams, who is the president of Wizards, comes from Microsoft, and I have never once heard her talk about her love of the game. I've heard her talk about business practices and microtransactions and monetizing the player base, just like somebody making shitty apps would do. Like this, she sounds like she should be the CEO of some shitty mobile app company and not Wizards of the Coast. I don't think she fundamentally gets it. I really don't. I don't think she's a good fit. I don't think she's a good fit to be in charge of Wizards, and we'll see how their stock does. So second, FAQ for a 2.0 release of the license, also obtained by IO9, still included several of the more controversial updates, notably the deauthorization of the 1.0A OGL in spite of Wizards of the Coast statement declaring the leaked updates as drafts already changed in the latest versions by the time of the leaks. However, it appears that the publisher is going back to the drawing board in a much wider capacity with plans for a new proposed version of the OGL that will be open to the public feedback from D&D players. I don't think they care. I think they've moved on. In the new statement, Brink confirms that a proposed new draft of the open game license will be released by or on this Friday, January 20th, for review by the D&D community. Players will be able to fill in a feedback form akin to play tests provided for early access to new D&D material in the Unearthed Arcana over a period of 2 weeks. Oh boy, I would hate to read some of those responses. After which WotC will analyze feedback and in turn present new changes and analysis based on what information was gathered. I think the fandom has been very vocal about what's going on here. Brink also reiterated that any future draft of the OGL will not have an impact for creators, including several step backs of prior intentions in early drafts, video content in the form of podcasts, actual play streams, or more already covered by the Wizard fan content policy, the sale of accessories for creator-owned content using the OGL, commission services such as consulting and commissioned work, content published for virtual tabletop platforms through the DMs Guild, and content already published under the 1.0A OGL licensees will no longer have to report royalty and financial information in order to access the OGL, and there will be no license back requirements in the new draft. The proposed system is a sharp 180 on Wizards' previously established intent for the new OGL, speaking to the depths of uproar surrounding previous drafts of the documentation. Hopefully this time it seems like the publisher is taking the public and financial drubbing it's faced in the wake of these plans leaking seriously, and whatever new iteration of the OGL that comes out of this process will be a collaboration between the company and community. I think it's done. I think they rolled a 1. I think it's done. I mean, again, every headline talking about what a bonehead move this was, and game companies are moving on, right? This is Ars Technica. I don't think they cover tabletop very often. Game makers stage mass exodus from Dungeons & Dragons open license. WotC is an existential threat to our game, one publisher says. So many prominent third-party RPG publishers say they're abandoning the OGL regardless of what changes WotC officially releases in a coming new version. What's more, many of the community have now lost faith in WotC's stewardship of the license rule system that has underpinned so much of the industry for the last 2 decades. A Pathfinder publisher, Paizo, is behind perhaps the biggest effort to move the industry away from WotC's OGL. And I think Kobold Press is doing something. I had a friend send this over, Jason, that Free League is developing 2 new open game licenses of their own. So there are going to be a lot of options. Now, the problem is that when you're dealing with smaller systems, you develop games and materials for these smaller systems, you have a smaller player base. And that was the allure of developing for D&D, was like, it was hands down the biggest system out there. But I think this is going to guarantee that Pathfinder is going to overtake D&D. Absolutely. Company announced last Thursday is creating a new open RPG creative licensed ORC designed to be open, perpetual, and irrevocable. That irrevocable italicization is in the original and intended as a pointed critique of WotC's leaked plans to deauthorize the original version of the open gaming license after publishers signed the update. Paizo does not believe that the OGL 1.0 can be deauthorized ever. Paizo writes in its ORC announcement, "While we are prepared to argue that point in a court of law if need be, we don't want to have to do that, and we know that many of our fellow publishers are not in a position to do so. Regardless of the legal fate of the OGL, Paizo says it wants to irrevocably and unquestionably keep alive the spirit of the open game license with its new ORC. The system-agnostic license, designed with the help of IP law firm Azora Law, will eventually be controlled and protected by a nonprofit akin to the Linux Foundation the company says. Until that new license is ready, upcoming Paizo products will be printed without any explicit license, the company says. Paizo's Orc effort has already drawn some significant support from the community. Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest publisher Chaosium, which never used the WotC OGL for its products in the first place, nonetheless writes that it's very happy to be working with the rest of the industry to come up with a system-wide OGL that anyone can use. Popular D&D module publisher Kobold Press has also lent its support to Paizo's Orc product, but stopped just short of committing to its use for its just-announced core fantasy rule set, codenamed Black Flag. Instead, Kobold says it's waiting to see exactly what shape the open gaming license might take in this new era, and will review the terms and consider whether they fit the needs of our audience and our business goals. Mutants and Mastermind publisher Green Ronin is also on board with Orc. Who knows when new people will take over the D&D brand, and who can say what their vision will be? That's true. Pramis wrote 15 years ago of WotC's game system license push. Who knows when the political winds at WotC will change again and things will get even more restrictive. We do not want to operate under such a cloud moving ahead. It's a mass exodus. Apart from the companies backing Paizo's Orc, including Legendary Games and Rogue Genius, some tabletop publishers are creating their own licenses or finding other ways to extricate themselves from the OGL. Blade Runner and RPG and Mutant Year Zero publisher Free League, for instance, says it's overhauling its unique Year Zero engine to remove any WotC OGL content. And we just talked about that. Old School Essentials publisher Necrotic Gnome has similarly announced that it's moving away from the OGL for future products. A lot of people are. Like, this is it. This is like the death knell of, D&D for sure. Basic Fantasy, which I recommended highly. And weirdly enough, the author of Basic Fantasy did not appreciate that because he thought I was getting political. In fact, it was the opposite. I was trying to recommend a system that was apolitical and that was not Wizards of the Coast because I saw the writing on the wall like 2 years ago. But he kind of apologized, so I digress. But for what it's worth, just objectively, my own personal feelings aside, Basic Fantasy feels the most like Redbox D&D to me, and it was at the time, I think, a system that was good to introduce young players to D&D because it's kind of what I grew up playing. But again, it sounds like he's going to overhaul it too. Basic Fantasy says it's in the process of excising the OGL from its products and plans to use a modified Creative Commons license for its future publications. It doesn't matter whether WotC parent Hasbro releases their new license or not. Basic Fantasy author Chris Gonnerman writes, it doesn't matter whether it stands up in court or not. Their attempt to invalidate the license we've always depended on and then to effectively steal what we've created demonstrates that they are an existential threat to our game. Again, not to dunk on him because he did kind of apologize, but the problem he had with me was I name-checked Basic Fantasy in a video called Maybe It's Time to Leave Wizards of the Coast. And that was like 2.5 years ago. And that was because they were getting weirdly political and greedy. And here we are. But anyway, I digress. I wish him well. I really do. I hope he does well. Yeah, Penny Arcade dunking on them, everybody dunking on them. They made their own competition. So let's talk about this. I had some folks send this over. I think Cinder Shadow sent this over. Hasbro's D&D division is big business, accounting for up to 72% of company profits, and it's in trouble coming from the Motley Fool. He said, don't look now, but Hasbro may have just failed a critical dice roll. For the past several weeks, Hasbro has been embroiled in a brouhaha of its own making under the leadership of CEO Chris Cox, who came from Microsoft, and he was in charge of Wizards, and then he put Cynthia Williams in charge, who's also from Microsoft, who doesn't seem to know anything about tabletop gaming or the culture or any of that. Hasbro has been moving to better monetize IP under the D&D brand. It's not going well for Hasbro. Wow. Yeah, and look, they got hammered because of poor decisions made in regards to Magic the Gathering. A lot of people complaining that they were overprinting cards. They had too many sets coming out. It was too hard to keep up with for most people. And Magic the Gathering players are not happy about some of the new stuff coming out for MTG. And look, I'm not a Magic player. I haven't touched Magic the Gathering in probably 20 years. But I'm reading through this, and it sounds like they're going to fundamentally change the game, which we know is going to go so well. I think it's kind of weird that Magic the Gathering has like freaking Transformers and stuff in it now. I'm like, what the hell is this? I mean, what is this? Why not just create a Transformers tabletop RPG or CCG or something? Why do we have to throw Transformers into freaking Magic the Gathering? It sounds like it's like the multiverse of Hasbro madness or something, and that's what this is. It's madness. It's corporate madness. But yeah, the Motley Fool's calling it out. It says, hard to overestimate how important Wizards of the Coast is to Hasbro. According to data from the S&P Global Market Intelligence, it accounts for 22% of Hasbro's annual revenue, but produces a staggering 72% of their profit. Books are cheaper to print than toys are to manufacture. And that would be my guess. The problem is Hasbro wants more. Late last month, news leaked that Hasbro has been mooting a new open game license for use of its D&D property, intellectual property, characterized as an update. They talk about this, that they're basically willing to take people's content, right? In doing so, they would essentially be tipping Hasbro off to any new revenue opportunities they discover so that Hasbro can move in and claim those areas for itself. Basically, if you make a really cool book or module or, supplement or something, Hasbro's like, yeah, that did like $1 million on Kickstarter. Ours. That's mine now. Mine. On top of that, anyone making more than $750,000, again, they're going to go back and revisit that, right? Why would Hasbro do it? Because they want the IP. Brave Sir Robin bravely ran away. On Friday of last week, Hasbro pulled an abrupt about-face and had subsidiary D&D Beyond publish a mea culpa on its website, arguing that its only goal in revising OGL was to protect players from hateful and discriminatory products. So they basically used diversity as a shield, and that pissed me off. Because this came a couple days after there was a blatant attack on OSR gamers by PBS NewsHour, where they basically said that all OSR gamers were racist bigots and that the history of Dungeons and Dragons was problematic. And thank God, official Wizards products are there with their anti-racist stances. You know what I'm saying? Even though they've been called out repeatedly for racist practices and all that stuff. And I think it was a business move. I think they were trying to discredit competition. And then now they're turning around and using this as, the reason we were doing the OGL, the reason we were doing it, the only reason we were doing it is we wanted to protect the community from the bigots. It's not about the profits. It's not about the money. It's about sending a message, which I think most people saw through pretty damn quick. And you're going to find out that a lot of this corporate virtue signaling that's why we get so pissed off about this stuff on the channel, because it's not real. They don't actually mean it. They do this shit and then they do other shit that just negates the shit that they did. And they put people through a hell of a lot of drama for non-issues. I mean, racist orcs, was that really a big deal? Was it really that big of a deal? What it means for investors. All right. Putting a brave face on the fiasco, Hasbro argues the situation is actually a win-win for itself and its customers. They won and so did we, guys. But in fact, if you assume, as I admit I do, that the primary goal of redrawing the OGL was to better monetize the company's D&D properties, grow revenue for Hasbro, and earn more profits for Hasbro shareholders, it's hard to see this outcome as anything but an abject failure for Hasbro's business. Failure. The company may eventually come out with a new OGL, but the chances of this document generating significant income for Hasbro appear to be nil, while the damage to the company's reputation is considerably more than nil. For the time being, this doesn't seem to have affected Hasbro's stock that much, which actually gained 15% as the tempest in Hasbro's teapot brewed. I suspect this is mainly because the issue has remained below most non-D&D fanatics' radars. Once the effects of the fiasco start showing up in Hasbro's financial results, I expect investors may come to the same conclusion I already have. Hasbro's critics won this round. Hasbro did not. Hasbro did not. And look, you Google D&D and it's all bad news. So they definitely damaged their brand. I mean, this is awful. The D&D world is on fire right now. Wizards of the Coast can only blame themselves. Yeah. So D&D Beyond requires $30 per player per month, according to Leak. Dungeons & Dragons fans call for boycott of the movie. They're boycotting the movie now. D&D Beyond subscribers find alternatives after OGL yeah, you done screwed up, Hasbro. This is like the worst PR nightmare I have ever seen for this company ever. This is bad. This is really bad. And I gotta tell you, Cynthia Williams has to go. Chris Cox might have to go too, because he put her in charge. Gonna wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.